this is April Elliott Kent from BigSkyAstrology.com. Today I'm speaking with astrologer and author Simone Butler. Many of you know Simone's writing from her contributions to the Mountain Astrologer magazine and her wonderful monthly new moon and full moon essays at mooncircles.com and at her own website astroalchemy.com. Simone's been a professional astrologer for more than 30 years. She is a coach, a consultant, and a teacher. She works with clients and students all over the world. Her first book, Astro Feng Shui, Making Magic in Your Home and Life, shared tips for combining Western astrology with Western Feng Shui. It's a fantastic book and one of my favorites. Her new book is called Moon Power, Lunar Rituals for Connecting with Your Inner Goddess. The book will be released on June 1st, 2017 by Fair Winds Press, and it's currently available for pre-order from your favorite online retailers. It's my great pleasure to welcome my good friend and one of my favorite astrologers, Simone Butler.
Hello, Simone.
Hi, dear. Wow,
Hi.
You make me sound so impressive.
You are so impressive, and I got most of that information from your own website, so I know that it's all true and accurate. No, I'm excited to talk to you about this book because you gave me an advance copy of it, and I've really enjoyed reading it, and we really want to get the word out about it because I think people are going to love this book. But before we talk about this particular book, I just wanted listeners to learn a little bit about you, a little bit about the woman behind the book. So I think people would love to hear about your journey to becoming an astrologer and what other kinds of professions or interests you might have had along the way.
It all began back in the late 70s, early 80s when I was living in Los Angeles. And at that time, there was a lot of exciting things happening in LA, including an explosion of spiritual activities and studies and things like astrology and all of that. And I was working as a fashion editor of a newspaper in downtown LA at the time. And I loved fashion, but I found it rather superficial. And so ultimately I got burned out from that job and I basically quit. During my period of unemployment, which lasted about a year, I just started taking classes and studying all these exciting metaphysical things that were floating in the air. And soon I found that I was going to go crazy if I didn't choose just one thing and really, I've got a Gemini moon, so I tend to get very scattered because I'm interested in a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And so I saw that studying 6 things at once was going to make me crazy, and therefore I chose astrology, or you could say that astrology chose me. I committed to a series of classes with a woman in LA, and I was open-minded. I mean, I've always loved astrology, but I didn't know anything beyond what most people know, the sun signs. I mean, my mother used to put the star scrolls in my Christmas stocking when I was little, and I ultimately went on to work for that company, which is kind of amazing. But the moon, the rising, all the rest of the chart, that was all new to me. So I had an open mind toward it, but as I started studying, oh my goodness, I saw how well it worked. It's not like you can predict things in exact terms, whether that be about, the person's inner nature or what's going to happen in the world. But I saw that the symbology, the language of astrology was so accurate. So from there, I just became so enthused, obsessed, you might even say. For about 5 years, I did nothing but take classes, read books, study charts, and then people started asking me to do their charts, and I never had intended to be an astrologer. It just sort of happened. I've always continued writing as well, which is my first profession, journalism, but I just added astrology into that, and ultimately I started writing books about astrology.
And here we are today.
Yes.
Well, as a fellow Gemini moon, I can recognize a lot of myself in your story when it comes to studying astrology. And I know for me, and perhaps for you as well, The nice thing about astrology for a Gemini moon person is there's always something new to learn.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how long you've been at it, and you and I both. I mean, you've been at it for 30 years, and I've probably been almost that long, and I'm still learning new things all the time. And
Indeed.
So how do you think your path in astrology led you to focus so much on the moon? Because I know you write about a lot of different dimensions of astrology, but I know you have a particular passion for the moon. I'm wondering how that came to be such a prominent part of the work that you do, and also what the moon means to you as a symbol. Because I know when I start with beginning students and I say, tell me about the moon, they say, it's about your feelings. And of course it does have something to do with the emotional nature, but I wonder if there's some other ways you can give us to think about the symbolism of the moon and why it has meant so much to your work.
Well, first of all, I am so ruled by the moon. Even though my moon is in Gemini, my sun is in Cancer, which makes me ruled by the moon. I actually have 4 planets in the sign of Cancer. So I've always been connected to lunar things of all sorts, most especially ritual. I've had a great passion for ritual for many years. And that can be either like a new moon ritual, a full moon ritual, or just ritual in general, which I tend to think of as a very lunar thing. Because to me, the moon at its essence is about connecting with our higher power. Nature is a big part of that. And the moon is our closest cosmic companion. We can watch her in the sky as she changes from new and builds to full and then back down as she wanes into the dark moon. And so that makes her, to me, a very personal planet, perhaps the most personal of all the planets. Therefore, the moon is, to me, yes, it is about our emotions. It's also about our instincts, that which comes naturally to us. And oftentimes, because it's either something that we learned very early in our childhood, or that we even brought forward with us from past lives, or that's coded in our DNA. One of the classic connections to the moon in astrology is with your mother and the lineage of her people. In some cases, it can be your father's people, whatever heritage or ancestral pattern you feel most strongly connected to. To me, the ultimate lunar symbol is the goddess. When I was asked to write a book about the moon, because this kind of fell into my lap, I didn't choose to write a book about the moon. They asked me to do it. And I was thrilled because I had been searching for like a year. I really wanted to write another book, and I just, for some reason, was coming up against the wall trying to figure out what to write about, what would be the umbrella, so to speak, of my next book. And so when they asked me to write a book about the moon, I thought, oh, of course. Yes, I want to write a book about the moon. That's exactly what I want to write about, because I saw immediately how many different aspects there are to the moon, including the goddess energy. And that's within women as well as men. My book is geared toward women. However, men have a goddess energy within them as well, and that can be seen through their moon. Not that I'm the ultimate expert on the moon. You know, there are certain things that have never made sense to me and that I don't really work with, like phases of the moon. I have a basic understanding of what it is to be born under those phases or what those energies mean, but it's not really my forte. You know, in astrology we find, and we have to really accept, I think, that certain things speak to us and certain things do not. That's okay. And I know you have that experience too, April, that certain things that many astrologers work with for whatever reason just don't really speak to you. So I focused in this book on the things that did speak to me, and that is the moon sign. Although the first half of the book is very much about, it's like an introduction to the moon itself, and a lot of sun moon lore and things of that nature, and goddess lore, and also the relationship between the sun and the moon as far as men and women are concerned. But the second half of the book is about each moon sign. I find that even the most spiritual people, if they even have a clue that they have a moon sign to begin with, they usually don't know what it means. It's not like the sun sign. In our culture, because of sun sign guides, everybody's aware of their sign, right? And they usually have a little bit of a knowledge of that. But the moon sign, which of course you have to look up in order to, in fact, in some cases, you have to know your time of birth. And so therefore, you probably don't know your moon, or you don't know what it means. So I went into great depth on each moon sign, and I correlated a certain goddess energy and an animal with each moon sign, which I believe hasn't been done before. The sun signs have their correlations. But anyway, so I like to come up with new connections like that, which is what I did in my Astro Feng Shui book as well. So that's the whole second half of Moon Tower.
Well, the Moon book really, to me, represents all the things that I know about you as an astrologer and even as a person. And definitely the goddess imagery and ritual I know of as things that are very, very important to you. And you take them really seriously. And one of the things I really enjoyed about the book was, as I was telling you the other day, it's like this wonderful little toolkit, which is so perfect for a Gemini moon. We love to give people little tools for doing things. And what's nice about it is when we talk about moon power, it's a really empowering book for the reader because it tells you about your moon sign. It tells you, I love the way you described it. You said, you know, your lunar superpower, which I love, but also your lunar shadow, because as we know, every symbol in astrology has its light side and its dark side. So it's really important to address that. Talk about the sexual nature with the moon, which I think is fascinating, because whenever we think about sexuality in astrology, our mind immediately goes to Mars or the 8th house, and you really point out just how essential the moon is to the way we function and connect with people sexually. About the karma of the moon. I love that you give both an ancient goddess as well as a modern goddess, usually an actress or somebody prominent in pop culture, which is great because that imagery is so accessible to a modern reader. And then you give some tips about the new moon and the full moon and what to do when the moon is transiting through the sign, some little journaling tips. It's just delicious. It's just, you can open any section of it. And I've been looking at it as the moon has been changing signs every couple of days and looking at that, looking at some of the journaling tips and going through it. And it's really, really helpful.
Well, thank you.
It's terrific, and to me, it's so much in the vein of your Astro Feng Shui book, in that it gives you specific things you can do, specific tips, and it gets your imagination flowing, and it elevates your mind and taps into a spiritual place as well. But I'm just a sucker for anything that I can use. And this is a really actionable book. There's all kinds of really fun things you can do with it.
Yay. Well, that was my intention in writing the book. I feel like if you can't use it, if it doesn't give you practical tips and tools and examples, then what use is it to you, really? I mean, it could be inspiring, but the practical side is crucial to me. Even though I have no earth in my chart whatsoever, I strive for grounding and practicality, both in my writing and also in my life.
Well, it brings the moon to life, and the moon is such a living symbol, and it changes more than any other symbol in the course of a month. And I think the book really reflects that, and I really appreciate that about it. And you did mention that your moon sign is Gemini. What lunar phase were you born at?
I was born at the balsamic phase, which is the darkest moon just before it becomes new in the sky. So balsamic is kind of, it's like being in the dark a lot of the time, truly. And I enjoy being in the dark. I love the nighttime, and I'm a Cancer, so I love my home. I probably stay home more than I really should, especially now I need to start getting out there and promoting my book. But I like the inner world. To me, the balsamic phase is about the inner world and the spiritual world, and it resonates with me. It's my area of greatest comfort and familiarity.
Were there some moon signs that were a little bit harder for you to get your mind around?
Well, yeah, for some reason the Capricorn moon has always stumped me. I know, of course, many people with Capricorn moon, and they're all different. They express that moon in different ways. I hope that I was able to convey the various possibilities of the Capricorn moon. And of course, the Scorpio moon is another one that's, because of its very hidden, secretive nature, is also a difficult one to wrap your mind around, to really distill, if you will, into a definitive accounting of what it means. Because those two signs are, for me, were the most difficult to talk about.
Well, the moon just has such a hard time in those signs,
Right.
Yeah, that what the moon is about is fundamentally so much at odds with what Capricorn tends to be concerned with as a sign.
Mm-hmm.
And it struggles along in Scorpio as well. So that makes a lot of sense. And it also makes a lot of sense that your natural approach as a Gemini moon might have found those two signs a little problematic.
Right. As I have in life, people with those two moon signs, in some cases, have been very mystifying or hard for me to understand.
Well, and I'm sure I can't remember those two chapters off the top of my head from the book, although I did look at them. But I know that you have a gift for making everything positive without sugarcoating it. Those two moon signs have been particularly vilified in a lot of astrology books, especially older astrology books. Mm-hmm. And I know that anybody with the moon in those signs is going to be so heartened to read a book that says something nice about their moon sign and positive and deep, and finds a way to frame it that isn't just, oh, you're doomed because your moon is in the sign,
Right.
So well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, it can be hard. People don't realize with astrologers that we're in the business of reading symbols, and that requires a lot of interpretation. And we can only interpret based on our own knowledge and understanding of things. And if we don't naturally resonate with the symbol, we have to really work hard to get there as writers and find a way to connect with that. So it's the reason I always love to ask that question of people that have written a book on a particular topic, because as a writer myself, I find myself coming up against these signs or these planets or these houses that stump me every time. And I'm always curious how other people get around that challenge when they're writing about astrology.
Well, the way I get around it is by giving examples of people, who have allowed me to talk about their lives and their emotional experience. In the case of this book, I give a lot of examples of friends and clients and in some cases celebrities as well, even though I don't know them personally, but I've used some quotes of things they've said that really illustrate to me their moon sign. And so that is how I get around personally, not fully understanding a particular moon sign or resonating with it.
Well, I know that, without invading your privacy about it, but I know that you are a big fan of doing ritual, and I'm wondering I think you even mentioned in the book that you begin the day with a little bit of altar time, as you call it. Some people, people of a religious bent would probably speak of it in terms of a prayer time or something like that. So you do ritual on a daily basis. Do you acknowledge also the the changing of the moon from one sign to another or from one phase to another? How do you generally work with that on a monthly basis?
Not phases, because again, phases are something that don't speak to me as much, except the new moon and the full moon. Those really speak to me. And being born close to a new moon, I definitely resonate most with the new moon. But during the time I was writing the book, I started going out at the full moon and standing under the moon. I made a point of doing it, particularly after reading what Dana Gerhardt, our good friend, had to say about standing under the moon, which I have actually, she gave me permission to use that in Moon Power. So I made a point of doing that, which in the past I never really, because I am more of a new moon person, I would do a ritual every month at the new moon, which for those who don't know is when the sun and moon join in the heavens. And the full moon, of course, is when the sun and moon are opposite in the heavens and the moon is illuminated. So sometimes I would do full moon rituals in the past, but it wasn't on a regular basis. But now I do. In fact, we just had a beautiful full moon last night, and I went outside and I saw how gorgeous she was next to Jupiter, shining bright in the heavens, and I raised my arms up and I drew down the power of the full moon. So now I'm in the habit of doing that as well as the new moon time, which is about planting seeds for the month at hand, whereas the full moon is more the full expression of whatever we might have been planting 2 weeks prior at the new moon. But you're right, I do, beyond that, have a altar ritual, a personal, I have altars all over my house, but the main one is in my bedroom. I have beautiful wall hanging of Lakshmi there. I have a statue to Ganesh, who I feel a very strong connection to. I actually bring Ganesh a tiny cup of milk every morning to honor him, and I chant his mantra, which is Om Gam Ganeshaya Namaha. Ganesh will help you. Ganesh, he's my man. I love Ganesh. He's the one who helps you through obstacles. Right now is somewhat of a temporary time for me to be doing the whole chanting and the giving of milk, but I had done that back when my father was ill and dying to really help me through that difficult time. And oh my God, I totally attribute the magic and the miracle of my dad's swift and easy passing, which he was in a lot of pain, so it was time, to Ganesh. And so now, because I'm in the process of birthing this book into the world, and I'm revamping my website with help, and I'm stepping out into the world in a new way, which my balsamic moon is a little bit trepidatious about. So I'm calling on Ganesh again to assist me in making that next step into the world, to bring my work and my teachings, if you will, to a wider community. Chanting to Ganesh is, it doesn't take long. It's maybe a minute. And then there are other entities and energies that I call on every morning, and I always bless and affirm the day, and I give thanks and I speak out loud, because the power of the word is everything, exactly what I'm wanting to have happen for that day. I blessed this talk that we were going to have, and in the afternoon I'm taking Max in for his rabies shot. So my kitten, it's time. And so I blessed that. And I also went out into the yard. This is another ritual I do every morning. I built a labyrinth in my backyard out of river rocks. It's small, but it's beautiful. And not every morning, but especially when the weather's nice, I go out there and I walk the labyrinth. When I get to the center, I also connect with, I have a beautiful little backyard.
Yes,
and a lot of the trees and the plants were things that my father planted when he built this house back in the early 50s. And the trees are huge and beautiful. And I've always felt a connection to this land. I grew up in this house, and there are invisible entities all over my backyard. I used to think of them as fairies. I couldn't physically see them, but I felt their presence, and I still feel their presence, and I know that they are guiding me. And so I call on them and I salute them, and also those beautiful old trees. It's so important to connect with nature every day. I'm not one for going on big hiking trips or anything like that, but my own little backyard is my nature sanctuary.
Oh, it's wonderful, and you have a lovely view of the ocean. And you're right, it's a little bit hard for those of us who are in the city to really avail ourselves of nature. And it's hard for modern people to really connect with the sky, and especially if you're in the city, because you don't really see the stars or the planets in the same way you would if you're out in a more remote area. But boy, you sure see the moon. So that's all the more reason to connect with her and use her as a big focus of your ritual work and connecting with nature, I would think.
Right, and I wanted to mention that I've been hugely influenced by the novels of Dion Fortune, especially Moon Magic and The Sea Priestess. Dion Fortune was a metaphysical writer, an initiate of a secret society who wrote back in the 20s, 30s, 40s. These novels, she claimed, were channeled. She felt that she wasn't writing them, and they are full of all kinds of queer and interesting and fascinating and useful lore about the moon and the power of the moon and why we should worship the moon. And oh my gosh, I have been more impacted by those novels, which I periodically reread. I have reread those two novels. I couldn't tell you how many times, because they are just so pivotal for my understanding and growth around the moon.
I've never heard of her or those books.
Really?
No.
Well,
but I'm not a super spiritual seeker person by nature. I'm a weird astrologer in that way.
But you've done a lot of astro feng shui rituals.
I love your astro feng shui. I didn't want to take over the whole talk with talks of your last book, but oh gosh, that's a great book and such a wonderful system. Touch on it briefly for the listeners, because it does tie into the moon, in that your work with astro feng shui was focused towards the new moon.
I realized that no one had really correlated Western astrology with Western feng shui, which is using the Bagua map, as opposed to the Chinese system, which is more compass-based. So I saw the need, and basically it all started when a friend of ours, Notori, gave me a little dinette set. This was back in 2007, I guess. And I put it in my kitchen, which happened to be the helpful people area of my home, according to the Bagua map. She gave it to me right around the time of an Aquarius new moon. And this light bulb went off in my head, and I realized, okay, a helpful friend just gave me this lovely gift right at an Aquarius new moon, which is all about friendship and community. And without thinking about it, I put it in the helpful people area of my home. Ding, ding, ding.
Right.
So I thought, hey, I wonder if this correlation between the new moons in particular signs and the areas of the home known as the guas would hold for all, the other signs. And it was a little tricky because there are 9 guas in the Bagua, different parts of your home, but there are 12 signs. So some of them had to do double duty. But basically, I found that the correlations did hold, and I conducted a research project. I got 30 people, and you were one of them, to help me by doing different rituals that I helped them to craft at the new moon in a particular part of their home and then report back to me on the results. The results were so interesting because in some cases it was what you might have expected, but in other cases it was just random, but positive for the most part. Although I know you've had and others have had experiences of when you start working with your house, and especially parts of your house that have been languishing in clutter or dust for a long time, you're stirring up a certain gremlin type of energy that can provide a seemingly difficult result, like when Johnny sat down on the bed and the bed collapsed right under your wealth new moon. But tell our listeners what was the end result of that.
I'm trying to remember what the end result was.
Well, it's in the book. I know it's been a long time, but the end result was, well, first of all, after the bed collapsed, of course, you realized you needed to buy a new bed.
Yeah,
which had been a long time coming. And then the furnace broke down, and you realized you had to either get it repaired or buy a new one, which was also a long time coming. And there was some stuff going on with the cars that month that was also an expense. And you had the money in the bank, but of course, who wants to put out that kind of money all at once? And yet, it needed doing. It's like the infrastructure of your life was in disrepair, and you'd been ignoring it, as we do, until something actually collapses and, you can't ignore it anymore. Basically, as a result of that, you fortified the basic structures of your life, and over time, your income did stabilize and increase. And some people did I had people win it at gambling under a wealth new moon in their chart. This couple in Australia were famous for that. They're in my book too, that it's several wealth new moons. They set up altars in their wealth area, and then they played the pokies or something like that. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's some kind of game that they play in that part of the world. And they won a lot of money. So, that's the kind of thing you think of and hope would happen under a wealth new moon when you activate that part of your house and you do a ritual. But it sometimes happens in more like what happened for you. It's whatever is appropriate, whatever the universe sees fit to bring to you.
It's going to move you in the right direction.
Yes.
I'm remembering now, and I feel like what happened was we cleaned out all the energy at that new moon. At the next wealth new moon, which would have been 6 months later, that may have been when I got my book contract.
I think it was.
Yeah, my second book contract. So it's like first releasing all of the old, stale, negative energy so that you have room for the new stuff to come in, perhaps.
Right. I'm glad you remembered that. That was a detail I had forgotten.
Always positive. Oh, no, I remember the good part.
I just remember the quote-unquote bad part because it was a seeming anomaly, and yet it turned out to be so necessary. And in the case of having to put out money, ultimately it ended up bringing more money to you.
Well, that was an evil bed, too. That was a bed that kicked me one time. That was just a really bad bed, so it needed to go. But I love the Astro Feng Shui system. I hope people will buy the 2 books as a pair and really play around with it because it's a great system. And it's, as I say, I never feel like I'm a big ritual person, but I have had amazing results with ritual. And your system is the one that I go to time and time again. I find the most useful and interesting for me anyway. So you mentioned before that this is a book specifically geared towards women, but I want men to buy it too. And let's give them a way that they can look at this book and what they can take away from it and learn about the goddess in themselves, the goddesses in their lives, or whatever. Does that sound like too much to ask for, or do you think that's a possibility for male friends?
I think it's very possible to read this book and to understand your own inner, as Jung would put it, your anima, the female energy within yourself by reading it, and by understanding your moon sign more deeply, but it also is the perfect gift to give your wife, your daughter, your female friend.
Aren't you clever? Yes, I hadn't even thought of that. That sells many more things.
Originally, when Jill asked me to write this book, that's the editor at Fair Winds, she said she wanted a gifty book. And I wasn't quite sure what she meant by that. But they've used a lot of very creative artwork. They commissioned artwork for the book. And there's a lot of white space in it. So it's not like a dense, hard-to-read book. It's not a tome. Yeah. It is 200 pages long, but it's, there's a lot of space and illustrations, making it easy to read and fun and beautiful. So, therefore, it makes a really nice gift. In fact, the other day, I've got this cute young guy who delivers water to my house every few weeks. He came and he asked how I was doing, and at that moment, I was doing some promo on the book, so I told him about it, and he said, "Oh, tell me when it's available. I want to buy it for my mom."
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and so I thought, well, how perfect is that? It's exactly what that book is intended for. He's 21. He won't read it himself, but his mom will probably love it.
Oh, that sounds terrific. Mm-hmm. That's a good note for our male readers. It is a super cute book, and I can't wait to see it in person because I've only seen the digital version of it. But I can tell from looking at the way it's laid out and the illustration, it really is quite fun to look at. And I love all the open space because if a book's mine and I have a hard copy, I will write in it. And I would scribble all over this book.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, use it like a little workbook and make notes of what happens when you do particular rituals. And, because another thing is when people will pick up a book like this, often they'll thumb to their own moon sign and just leave it at that. But what's great about your book is it acknowledges that there's a place for each of us in every moon sign. There is a new moon in that sign. There's a full moon in that sign. Regardless of where your personal moon sign is, you can interact and do something with the moon in every sign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all you have to do is figure out when that particular new moon or full moon is happening.
Right, and you have that in the book. You've got a little...
Yeah, I have an appendix with all that information.
So it's perfect, and I think people should indulge in some really neat colored markers and just mark the heck out of that book.
Aw.
That's what I intend to do.
Also, I'm hard at work trying to figure out how to put a moon finder on my website. Mm-hmm. And make it really easy for people who don't know their moon sign to be able to just go to my site, plug in their birth information, and find out their moon along with just, a little paragraph about what that moon sign means.
Oh, that'd be great. So are there any other... And I know you said that it took a long time between books to figure out what you wanted to write about next. But is there another book that you have had in mind or a subject that's always seemed really interesting to you that you think you would like to write a book about? Like the book you would love to read that you haven't found anywhere?
Yes. Being a former fashion editor and having always loved clothing and design and color, I have always been drawn to dressing and using the colors and gems of whichever planet rules a particular day of the week. And this is something that the average person knows nothing about, but every time I mention it, like, for instance, I always wear purple on Thursdays, and for a while I was a member of a women's club, and people would always ask me about my outfits, and I would say, well, it's Thursday, it's Jupiter's day, and Jupiter's color is this royal purple, and so if you wear this color on that day, you will be tapping into the energy of Zeus or Jupiter, who is the god that rules knowledge and wisdom, among other things, and expansion and travel. And, there are things you can do on particular days, or like today, for instance, is a Tuesday, so I'm dressed in colors of a reddish nature. I don't like bright red, but I've got like maroon and terracotta and this whole ensemble in those tones on because it's Mars Day. And Mars is all about action and energy and just getting out there.
I would read that book. I would buy that book. I would read the hell out of that book. Because I wrote a little thing one time for Llewellyn about the days of the week, and there used to be old nursery rhymes and stuff about things people did on particular days of the week. And, of course, it correlated almost perfectly with the astrology of the days of the week. As you say, certain planets having an association with days of the week. That is such a rich topic that would be so interesting to delve into. I'd love to see you do that.
Well, thank you. I already wrote an ebook on it. I called it Everyday Enchantment. I don't know whether that's ultimately going to be the title of the book, but it is the title of the ebook. And our good friend Francesca, who's a wonderful graphic designer, put it together in such a gorgeous way. And I used collages. Collage is my artistic medium, and I used a bunch of different collages to illustrate. In fact, I made particular collages to illustrate each day and a typical outfit, perhaps, or something inspirational that you might wear on like a Monday, which is Moon's Day, that type of thing. Anyway, I have this ebook, and I'm currently trying to figure out how to put it on my Amazon page. Technology is not my strong suit. I know there must be a way to offer it on there. That way people can at least get a head start on dressing and tuning into the energies of each day.
Oh, that sounds great. Tell us where people can see you, hear you talk. I know you're going to be out promoting the book, read your work. Tell us what's coming up for you in the next 6 months or so and where people can find you.
Right. Well, I have a book signing coming up at Warwick's in La Jolla on July 16th, which is the day before my birthday.
Aww.
So on my what's called the Solar Return Day, I'm going to be actually meeting and greeting people at San Diego's last remaining independent bookseller, which is a lovely space if you've never been there. They have these local author book signings on Sundays, and so I have reserved that day. And although I won't actually be speaking, like giving a talk, it'll be a place where you can ask questions and meet me and either get your copy autographed or get a copy and have me autograph it or whatever you want to do.
Bring the one that you already have and then buy 5 more for the women in your life and get Simone to sign all of them at the same time.
Oh, thanks. Good idea. And since it's my birthday, I'm still scheming on some little fun thing. Somebody said, oh, you can have moon pies for everybody. So I don't know about moon pies, but something fun and celebratory in nature will be happening that day. So that I'm looking forward to doing. And the other thing I'm excited about is I just recently joined Instagram, and I've been posting every day. If you're on Instagram, you can find me at simone.moonpower. Every day I post a different fun image because I'm really into images as well as writing. And like today, the moon's going into Scorpio this afternoon, so I posted a collage I did that's very scorpionic, and then I give a little blurb about what that energy is and an instruction or a suggestion, I should say, for what you might want to do under a Scorpio moon.
Oh, well, look at you, the social media goddess.
Well, I've never really been posting as much as I should on my Facebook Astro Alchemy page, which that's got to change. But I just took to Instagram like a duck to water because it involved images.
Right.
You know? Anyway.
So I know that you also have some speaking engagements coming up. You'll do one in San Diego, and aren't you going to Arizona as well?
Yeah, I have. Well, July 29th, my good friend Anna Celestino and I, who do a monthly YouTube video called The Cosmic Download, we're doing our once-a-year live and in-person Cosmic Download. It's like a review of what's happened so far this year and what's coming up, but focusing on the big August 21st total solar eclipse, which is big, big news. will be giving little forecasts for people based on their sign. And Anna's a wonderful intuitive. She sees and reads energy, and we compare notes every month on what's happening in the heavens, and it's a very fun back and forth, kind of like you and I are doing right now. And so
fun. I've listened to it a number of times.
Oh, thank you. Well, so that's July 29th from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m., and that's at the Expressive Arts Studio in North Park, San Diego. So that's coming up, and of course I'm speaking at the San Diego Astrological Society on September 8th on the dark side of the moon, which is, I think, an interesting kind of variation on the theme of the moon. I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure that the Mountain Astrologer is going to be publishing the article that I wrote called How Secure is Your Moon at some point this year. I don't know what issue. And and then I'm going to Tucson and Phoenix in October to speak to their astrological groups the week of October 17th or sometime around mid-October. I'll be in that area for 10 days, and I'm looking for a place to talk in Sedona while I'm there. So in between, I'm sure there will be other talks that I'll be giving, and those will all be posted on my new website, which will premiere, I believe, May 7th.
That all sounds great, and hopefully when you're in Arizona, will you be available if people want to book consultations or something like that? Or
definitely, yeah.
Okay, good for people to know. Well, my dear, this has been wonderful. I've loved talking to you. I always love talking to you, but it's been especially fun to talk with you about your books and your work, and hopefully to share this with some new listeners and some new readers who I'm sure will be captivated by you as I am.
Oh, you're so sweet. And such a dear friend for doing this.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And everybody, this has been Simone Butler, astrologer and author of the upcoming book, Moon Power, Lunar Rituals for Connecting with Your Inner Goddess. Find her at astroalchemy.com and on Facebook. And what's your Facebook? Is it Astro Alchemy as well?
Yes.
Page. All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Simone, and thanks everybody for listening. And be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.